Hi everyone, this is Tarun from Perfect Pixel. So this was the image that we took last week in the tutorial of macro photography, and these are the EXIFs of this image. It was taken on f9 1 by 1/60th of a second at ISO 320 with 105 Nikkor lens. So the way my workflow goes to edit this image is that as in my last video I told you guys that the subject for me is not the flower itself, but it's this center part of it. So I'm gonna concentrate more on here rather than overall look of the flower. Okay, so we just fit this in window. Now what I did is that I just copied the file on my computer, dragged and dropped into Photoshop, and I'm using Photoshop CC 2020, and this will open because it was shot in RAW. This will open in Camera Raw. So you can see here Camera Raw 12.2 with Nikon D850. Now first things first, what I'll do is that I'll go to the lens correction tab and I'll check these two boxes which will enable the profile, and profiles are always built in into the Photoshop. So here's my Nikon lens that I shot with and Nikon camera. Okay, now what I will do is that we'll go to the basics tab first, and just a quick thing before we start editing: those who didn't have macro lens with you and you need to do editing, what you can do is that you can download the actual raw file which is in the description and follow the steps in this video. Okay, so this is exactly the same raw file that we are editing now. I'm going to post it into the description and you guys can go ahead and download it. Okay, let's get started. Now after the lens correction, let's see, that's checked, and the lens profile is good, which is 105 Nikkor. Yep. Now this image is way too cooler for me. By cool I mean that it's got lots of blue tones in the background. I don't want that. I just want this to be in a bit of a warmer tone. So what we can do is that we can actually change the temperature of this image. See, if we go all the way to 550,000 Kelvin, it will become yellow, and if we go all the way to 2000 Kelvin, it will become blue. So blue is your cold tone and yellow is your warm tone. So we need to find a balance as per your liking, but for me what will work is anything around 6300. Yeah, just let's make it 6350. Yeah, that's good. And because this is a kind of a magenta flower, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a tint. So about 12ish or 13. Yeah, plus 12 would do. Now before changing any of these values, what I like to do is that I like to play with the clarity slider. So clarity slider, it's basically self-defined slider. It brings out the details. So yeah, if just don't overdo it, otherwise you'll just bring out the details which doesn't look natural. So the flowers are not natural these ways. So what we do is that we just go to plus, say plus 7 plus 8. That's fine with me. Excuse me. And we go to dehaze. Now this will just add a bit of a contrast, so we won't just push it. So plus 8 is fine with me. And the next thing that we want to choose is the shadows. As you can see that this is like the shadows on my subject, they are really dark, so I just want to brighten up the shadow part of it. So what I'll do is that I'll just increase the shadows by plus 15. I'll just make it plus 15. Yep. And as I told you in my previous video, I don't like the highlights in my subject, so I'll just decrease the highlights and you can bring the details of the flower back. Okay, so that is the basic correction that we do over here, and we'll also increase a bit of a contrast on the image. So I will just push it to about plus 15. So I'll just type in plus 15 from my keypad, press enter, and it's done. Now I still want the shadows to come out from this particular area. So what I'll do is that I'll go to the radial filter tool and I'll just reset this. Hang on. So I'll just reset to the default, so nothing is being changed over here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just draw a circle over here, just small circle, and place it about here. And what we're going to do now is that we're going to change the values, which is inside this circle. Over here, have a look, the inside is selected. If I select outside, so if I change any value, the outside will, everything apart from inside will be affected. And if I select inside, everything inside of that circle will be affected. Okay, so because we need this to be constrained, so we just select the inside part of it. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to increase the exposure by 1.25ish. Yep, and this is good. I'll just place it over here. Yep, looks good. And now what I'm gonna do is that decrease the highlights, of course, to get the details back. And the next thing that we're gonna do is that we want shadows to come out. So, pardon me. So we want shadows to come out. So I'm just gonna increase the shadows to about plus 45ish. Okay. And the clarity slider, we're gonna boost it up again to about 35. Okay, so only this part it's being sharpened and being cleared, and we just increase a bit of shadows, and you can actually move this circle and see. So it's a kind of a gradient, so at the center it's the most, and as it goes towards the edges it just fades away. So we just need to place this according to our preferences. Here we go. And that's about it, and we just open the image. Okay, now this is a background image. What I like to do is that just press Ctrl J. This will make a copy of your background image. We'll just name this base, and we'll hide this background. Okay, and we convert it into a smart object. So right click on your layer, convert to smart object. By converting into smart object, we can work indestructibly. So any changes we make to the image, it will just get layered under this smart object. So later on, if we need to change any values of it, we can always do that. So that's the beauty of converting it into a smart object. Okay, now the first layer that we apply is a curves adjustment layer. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to click on this icon here and click, and here's your curves adjustment layer. And on this part represents shadows, and this is your highlights, and the middle one are the midtones. So I'm just going to make 3 points starting from the midtones, right in the center, 1 in the center of the highlights, 2 in the center of the shadows, 3. Now I want to just bring down a bit of shadows to give this image bit contrast, so I'm just going to slide it, and as you can see the background, it becomes more kind of black rather than faded away. Okay, and I'm going to bring down a bit of lightness as well, and I'm going to bring down the midtones as well. So this is before and this is after applying the curves adjustment layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring it a bit more down, and now that's too much, so I'm just gonna leave it about here. Okay, now this being done, next thing I'm going to apply is a levels adjustment layer. So levels, again, the black side is the shadows, the white side is the highlights, and the midpoint is your midtones. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just move this slider a bit to right, okay, and move these highlights a bit to the left, just a touch. So this is what shadow does. It just gave us a further contrast. Okay. Now, now what we do is that we apply a bit of a hue saturation layer as well. So hue saturation. Now this can be controlled with your colors like red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magentas, RGB, and YCM. So, but what I'm going to do is that the easiest way to control, increase or decrease any color is just to click this hand tool, go on the color, and you can, if you slide right, it becomes more saturated. If you slide left, it becomes desaturated. Okay, so we can change this color of the flower to exactly white, and this effect you can get it with this method. But I'm not after this method. I just want this to look as a fine art flower. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring this to 0 again, and I'm just going to increase a bit of magentas in it. So just give me a second. We'll do this to 0, select the slider, and I'm just going to increase it a bit. Yeah, that's it. Okay, now here is too much magenta over here. So what we have to do is that the good thing about the adjustment layers is that it comes with a mask. So basically what happens is that all the information stored, it can be either hidden or revealed with the help of the masks. So right now the mask is on, which means that white, it's revealing the information, and if I press Ctrl I over here, it will hide the information of this hue saturation layer. Okay, now what I have to do is that I'll press Ctrl I again on the mask, and this will turn it to white. I'll go to my brush and make sure the opacity is somewhere between, I'll just do 35 and 35 over here as well, and just decrease my brush size with the bracket keys. Left bracket is decrease, right bracket is increase. Now because this is a white mask, so if I paint white over a white, it doesn't make any difference, right? So what I have to do is that I have to press this button to toggle the foreground and background color. So the foreground is black. Now my brush is black. So if I paint over this, it will bring out the details from the underneath layer, which is our base layer. Okay, so I really didn't like that too much of magenta in it, so that is the reason I'm doing it. Okay, now I'm just gonna do this couple of times, brush over this bud in the center and make sure that there's a perfect balance of pinks or magentas. So the hue saturation curve, so this was before, this is after. So before, just pay attention to this details over here, the color over here, and if I turn it on, this becomes more prominent. Okay, now you can leave the edit over here, it looks good, and you can export the image, but as I told you before, we're gonna make it black and white because black and white flowers look like class apart and it gives a different dimension to your photo. So to do that, there are two methods. The first thing is that you can you can go to image mode and change this to grayscale. Alright, so once you change it to grayscale, it will become black and white. But the way I like to do it, I like to take controls of all the colors and make the most out of it. So by that what I mean is that I just go to this adjustment layer and go to black and white. Now this will turn black and white, okay? But as I told you that I like to control the image, okay? So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go to my red channel and I'm gonna decrease it or increase it. So as you can see, have a look over here. If I increase the red channel, it becomes lighter. If I decrease it, it becomes darker. Because we have a red color over here, that's why this part of the image is getting affected. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm just gonna make it a bit wider. And with the yellows, yes, of course we have yellows, which is the stem. So if I decrease it, it becomes black. If I increase it, it becomes white. So I don't want this to be like really white, so I just need a bit of a light on the stem. Yep, that's it. And with the greens, have a look. That's the remaining part of the stem over here. So if I decrease it, it becomes black. Increase it, becomes white. So I have just to find the perfect balance where it matches with the rest of the stem. So I guess this is the place. With the cyans, I don't think we have any cyans in our image. Yes, we do, which is the center part of the flower over here. So if I increase the cyans, have a look, it becomes brighter. And the same deal, if I decrease the cyans, it becomes darker. So I'm just gonna give it a bit of a bright tone over here. With the blues, yes, it's gonna affect big time. So let's have a look what blue does. So if I increase it, have a look at the center of the petal over here on the bud. So if I increase it, it's increased. If I decrease it, this is black. So again, I'll just find a perfect balance, and I really like this to be somewhere over here. Okay, so this is the original image, like after a couple of edits, and this is turning it into a black and white. Okay, so that's how we convert this into a black and white. Now I just need a bit of more contrast. So what I'll do is that I'll go to my adjustment layer and apply a curves adjustment layer again. Now over here, I'm gonna make just 2 points because I don't want midtones to get affected. So I'll just decrease the shadows a bit, and increase just a touch of highlights to make it an S curve. And what I want to do is that I want a matte, kind of a matte effect on my photo. So I'll turn all my shadows to a bit gray rather than black. So I'll just take this bit up, and as you can see, this has actually turned a background into a matte effect. And this one looks much better rather than just normal black and white. Okay, so that's how we convert it. Now what I have to do is that there are lots of shadows over here, so I like to bring them out. So I'm gonna apply one more curves adjustment layer. Okay, and with the shadow slider, I'm just gonna pick a bit up. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is that invert the layer by pressing Ctrl I just inverted the mask. I'm gonna select my brush tool, make sure the opacity is somewhere between 50ish, and the flow is 35 is fine. And now the black is hiding the effect. I want the effect to be visible over here. So what I have to do, I have to select the white color from here. Now my brush foreground is white, so if I paint over this, it's gonna bring the shadows out from the center part of the flower. There you go. So that's before and that's after. That's before and that's after. So at the end, it really comes to your personal choice how you want your photo to come out. So I really like it black and white. That's how I like it, and I really think it gives an extra punch, an extra dimension to the photo, an extra depth to the photo. So that's how we do it. And yeah, that's about it. And I would just leave this photo here, and if you want to export it, what you can do is that you can go to file, you can go to export as, and it will render the image because it's a high-res image, so it takes time. Now here you go, and make sure the format is JPEG or PNG. I'll go for JPEG. quality 100%, and make sure you convert it to sRGB. It works better. It won't change any contrast or anything once you import it into the Lightroom for your editing if you want. But I'm happy with the photo, so I'll just hit export and export the photo. Okay. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and found something useful. So what we did, just a recap, we started with this base image. We applied a curves adjustment layer to give it a bit of a contrast, in which what we did is that we drew 3 points on highlight, midtones and shadows, and we adjusted them accordingly. Next, what we did, we just applied a curves levels adjustment layer, and we just moved these 2 points, which is your highlights and your shadows, and just as per your taste. I like it a bit underexposed, so I like to play with shadows, make it a bit darker. And next thing what we did is that we apply hue saturation layer just to bring this magenta out if you want to export it over here like this image as a colored image. So you can always just go to same file, export, and you can just follow the step, export as and it's done, and you're good to go. But I wanted this to be a black and white kind of a fine art look. I really think it gives a depth. That's me. So what we did is that we applied a black and white adjustment layer, and we played with red RYGCBM, which is your red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and magenta. So RGB and YCN channels. Okay, and later on, to give a bit of an extra punch again, we applied a curves adjustment layer. So in this curves adjustment layer, we just played with shadows and highlights. So a bit of an S curve to give this a matte effect. We just drag this point and put it a bit out. So this was just black. So I like to do it just a bit of gray, not 100% black, and I'm happy over here. Now the shadows were more in this image, so I had to bring the highlights out of the shadows. So what I did is just apply another curves adjustment layer, invert the mask, and then just brush over it, and there you go. Okay, so anything that you think is like underexposed or bit dark, so you don't have to make another curves adjustment layer, you can actually paint over the petals and it will become more brighter. There you go. But just keep in mind that the brighter it is, the less details it has. So you have to make a decision where to stop and how far you need to continue. Okay, so I really hope you guys had fun with this short tutorial. I'm happy with this image, so if you guys are happy, just give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe and share. And if you have any questions regarding this process, starting from the tutorial to the editing, you're more than welcome to leave the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. So until next time, take care, have fun, and stay safe, and stay isolated. Alright guys, good night and have fun. Bye.